Hey everybody, this is Taylor T. Carlson, and it's live stream time again. Going to continue on with the Star Wars Insider magazines that I've been looking at the last few weeks. Now, just giving you a fair warning, I'm getting over a cold, so if my voice is a little raspy or if I have to take some breaks from speaking or have some water, that's why. Today we're looking at this is issue number 88 of the Star Wars Insider, July-August of 2006. Like I said earlier, this is when I was working at Tower Records, so I was able to get a lot of magazines when I was working there. And it's just about the stroke of noon, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Now, the cover of this issue, we've got Emperor Palpatine at his demonic best. And it says right here, it was a Sith Lord, cover of 4. So I guess they had alternating covers, one for each of the Sith Lords. Dark Lords of the Sith, The Evolution of Evil, Special Sith Issue, the original versions. That, of course, probably a reference to those DVDs that had the non-anamorphic transfers of the unaltered versions of the film. The original cuts certainly deserved better than that. Sith Training with Darth Maul, Obey Vader, Exclusive Fiction. Each of these issues always included some fictional stories that went in the universe, it seems, though probably no longer canon due to Disney acquiring the franchise and abolishing a lot of the old EU. Here's the spine of the issue. On the back cover, it's got this Star Wars miniatures game, and it's got Anakin Skywalker as a little boy, and then of course, after he became Darth Vader, wielding the red lightsaber. A lot of promo art for Revenge of the Sith depicts Vader with a red lightsaber, but he doesn't actually use one in that film. Inside, we have an ad for Brian's Toys. This store must have been a pretty big deal back in the day because it seems like they promoted it in every single issue. Got the table of contents, which has pictures of the alternate Sith covers we discussed. And then there's an ad for a store called Cloud City Collectibles. Yeah, just as I guessed, those 4 covers are of the 4 Sith Lords that appear in the movie. You got, of course, Darth Sidious, Emperor Sheev Palpatine. Then you have Darth Maul, whose real name is just Maul. And then this looks like Count Dooku with Asajj Ventress, or Darth Tyrannus as he's known as a Sith Lord. And the other one is, I'm guessing that's Darth Vader, kind of a pale cover there. Not really and it's a tiny little thumbnail, but yeah. And there's the ad for the Cloud City Collectibles. They got, letters from the editor here, and then on this side they got an ad for some of the Star Wars Transformers. This one's like an ARC 170, that's a clone trooper. A sort of mystery answered. And I'm just seeing some of the stuff they say here. There's like a lot of people giving praise to the filmmakers and some game stuff. And then they're talking about how you could put old PlayStation games in CD players, and sometimes they would have the actual soundtrack playable. And then they got some funny questions people ask here, like, why are all the rankings of spacecraft in the Rebel Alliance and Empire based on the Navy? After Emperor Palpatine defeats Yoda in Revenge of the Sith, why do Yoda and Obi-Wan go into exile? Why don't they team up and go after Palpatine together? Well, probably because he has an entire empire backing him up. Not to mention, as we'd see in later media, Inquisitors and other dark side beings. If Luke was supposed to be hidden from the Empire, why wasn't his last name changed? I mean, that's been addressed more times than I can count, and the reason is because he was hidden on Tatooine, which is the planet that held the most pain for Darth Vader, so it was a place that he would never go back to. Also, they probably wanted to honor his heritage as well, because his father was once a great hero in the Clone Wars. And then here's an ad for those DVD releases that had the DVD cuts of the movie, but then they also had the non-anamorphic widescreen versions, which, again, very disappointing they didn't give the original cuts of the movie more love than that. And to this day, we still have that problem. And that's why there's so many bootleggers out there making versions of the movies that, don't have the edits and so forth. Obey Vader. This is just looks like some fan art and an interview with someone who did some of the art. Faces of Evil. This looks like model making and makeup. You can see some of those really grotesque Darth Vader makeups before he had to get the life support armor, and then you got Darth Sidious right there, right after he gets deflected with his own Force lightning. And of course, Vader being burned is pretty much the reason that was the first Star Wars movie to get a PG-13. Yeah, bands show their Sith side. How can I get your job? Talking to people who work at Lucasfilm. Got to look at some, Indiana Jones stuff here, because of course George Lucas also created the Indiana Jones series, even if he didn't direct any of the films. And then there's some, license plates here. They got the guy from the band Kasabian wearing a Darth Vader shirt there. Yeah, technical readout. They got the Death Star 2 main hangar. And then they got to look at some of the scenery when Darth Vader is dying, when he was portrayed by actor Sebastian Shaw. And of course, there was a big outcry when they replaced Sebastian Shaw's Force Ghost with that of Hayden Christensen. But Sebastian Shaw was actually far too old to be playing that role, because he was about 66 at the time. And Darth Vader only would have been in his 40s when he died. And Hayden Christensen, of course, was portraying Darth Vader right before he turned to the dark side. So he reverts to his original self back when he was still in the light. And if you read the canon Darth Vader comics from Marvel, there's an inner battle going inside his psyche between his then current self, which is reflected by the figure in the black life support armor, and then the little bit of goodness left in him represented by the Hayden Christensen look of the character. Yeah, morbid visions, and this is just like some artwork for the Sith Lords that was done by professional artists. Some of these actually look pretty cool. This might be, if I'm not mistaken, that might actually be the picture of Palpatine they used on the cover here. And then the other images that may have been used, yeah, that's exactly what these are. These are the alternate cover images and so forth. Yeah. Heritage of the Sith. This deals with, obviously the history of Sith Lords. Obviously, some of this lore has changed since Disney took over the franchise. And then they got to look at some stuff here. I mean, some ancient Sith Lords. I mean, this almost looks like Mother Talzin from the Clone Wars series, although predating it. So I wonder if this is supposed to be her, or if this is a prototype for that character. I mean, technically she's a Dathomirian Night Sister that uses the Force, not a Sith. And then more of this Sith story here. Lessons in Light and Darkness. This is an interview with Ray Park, who portrayed Darth Maul. And he appeared in a few other films around that time as well. He actually also portrayed the character of Toad in the first X-Men movie that came out back in the year 2000. More stuff about Ray Park, and they mentioned some of the other movies he was in, including, X-Men, like I just mentioned, What We Do Is Secret, Fanboys. Then there's a look at a training center that he studied at for his martial arts knowledge. Yeah, my Sith apprenticeship, and they got some actual training photos of him. They got him using a bow staff that I guess is kind of similar to the double-bladed lightsaber he uses in the film. Yeah, a lesson in absolutes. Sorry, like I said, I am getting over a cold here. And this is where people ask some of their questions about the movies they need clarifications with. And someone asks, only a Sith deals in absolutes, is what Obi-Wan says, but isn't Yoda's quote, do or do not, an absolute? And in some ways, that's a reflection of the narrow dogmatic vision that the Jedi had fallen into, which Palpatine himself mentions. And then someone asks about, Mustafar and Geonosis being pretty similar in distance from Coruscant. But then they talk about, how did they get from one place so slowly, one place so quickly? But then, of course, they mention, you have hyperspace lanes and light speed travel. Yeah. Was Obi-Wan aware of the Rebel Alliance? Somebody asks. And they mentioned that, yes, he did. And he'd certainly be more aware of it in the new Disney canon because there's that Obi-Wan series where he actually does leave Tatooine for a period to help a young Princess Leia. And then they talk about, the definition of the word Padawan. And then some of the casualties of General Grievous. And they said, did the Emperor and Darth Vader take new apprentices after the creation of the Empire? And again, that's something that in the old canon was explored. I mean, there was actually a character named Starkiller in the Force Unleashed video games that was like a secret apprentice of Darth Vader. And then the name Starkiller was, of course, supposed to be the original name for the characters that became Skywalker in the final films. And they also used the name Starkiller Base for the fortress in Force Awakens. And then they talk about, who's in charge on Kamino. And so forth. What's good, Taylor? Did you watch Skeleton Crew? And if you did, what are your thoughts? I actually have not watched Skeleton Crew yet, but I did renew my Disney Plus subscription because they had that Black Friday deal. So I am going to try to watch that. I've heard people refer to it as basically the Goonies in space, and that to me sounds like a pretty glowing recommendation. I haven't sat down and watched one of the Star Wars shows on Disney Plus in a while. I started watching The Acolyte, and I just couldn't get into that, but Skeleton Crew I'm looking forward to. I'm in a film critics society out here in Vegas, and the guy who runs the society actually interviewed some of the people from the show, and he made it sound like he was pretty excited about it. Yeah, Stranger Things vibe, definitely. Believe it or not, I've actually never watched Stranger Things, but again, another show I've heard great things about. And right here, there's, the rest of that questions ad, and they got an ad here for an AT-AT model, or AT-AT, whatever pronunciation you prefer. Yeah, Betrayal is just the beginning. And this is fiction by author Jason Fry. He wrote several of the books back in the day. Not sure if he's written any in the newer Disney canon or not, but that is a name that's come up a lot. And I am a little behind on a lot of the extended universe stuff, even, in the newer canon. Yeah, Legacy of the New Jedi Order. This is a series of books called Legacy of the Force. Aaron Alston, Karen Travis, Troy Denning. Some of the various authors here and some interview clips and the like. Legacies of Future Orders, and it looks like this might be, like stuff that's set in the future in the old canon, like substantially later than the whole Battle of Yavin era that we explore in the classic trilogy. Bear in mind, this was long before the sequel trilogy was a thing, because this issue came out in 2006, and then, you didn't start getting the modern version of the Star Wars universe until about 2014 or so with some of the novels and comics. Okay, there's more characters from those stories here. We have someone whose name is Skywalker. It looks like he's like a descendant of Luke. Why is the dark side so darn attractive? And they got some like cool random dark side merch here, and look at some toys and model building. Yeah, one thing I love about the original trilogy was the work that went into the model building, because all of that just looks so good. And that's why a lot of those effects have aged better than the CG-heavy prequel trilogy. More stuff here, and you got a picture of Vader and one of his Imperial officers, and then you got a Jabba the Hutt piece down there as well. Yeah, Ghost of the Sith, a short story by the author of Scholastic series, The Last of the Jedi. This takes place between books 2 and 3 in that series, yeah. Yeah, Scholastic is a company that does a lot of like children's books. A lot of them, appear in schools and things like that. Like, if I'm not mistaken, Scholastic was actually the company that put out the Goosebumps television series. And then I do remember also in the 90s, they had a series of Star Wars kids books called Galaxy of Fear that was sort of put out to capitalize on the success of the Goosebumps franchise. And then they got a model here of a burned Darth Vader, like a bust. And then that story continues over here as well. It's a pretty cool looking piece right there. Yeah, Virtual Sith. This talks about games in which you can portray Sith Lords. They got games where you can use Darth Vader's TIE Advanced X1, Darth Vader in the human incarnation, Darth Vader in the armored incarnation, just various appearances in games and the like. And this is back when LucasArts was a separate video game company. When Disney took over Lucasfilm, of course, LucasArts was shut down. And I believe EA made the last few Star Wars games. You got Darth Sidious, Darth Maul, Darth Tyrannus, Asajj Ventress. They talk about things like the Battlefront games, the older Battlefront games where you could play as these characters, as the villain characters. And then it says here Darth Maul, apparently he was a hidden skater in one of the Tony Hawk games as well, which that's kind of interesting. Probably wouldn't be the case if they kept doing the remastered ones due to all the legal issues. I remember there was a Tony Hawk game where you could play as Spider-Man also. Yeah, villains of the Old Republic. They got characters like, Darth Revan, and then a few others I'm admittedly not familiar with. I'm not sure how many of this ancient Sith lore are still canon in the current Disney canon. I know Darth Bane actually appeared in the Star Wars Clone Wars series, near the end of the series. At last, they will have their revenge. You got more of these figures here. They got figures from the earlier Tartakovsky 2D Clone Wars series. Darth Maul Sith probes. There's a Darth Maul statue, a Lego Star Destroyer, and even a Lego version of Jabba's sail barge. And I know some of the toys call the sail barge the Katana. I don't know if they ever actually use a name anywhere in the Star Wars universe outside of the toy itself, but that's pretty cool. I'm guessing the Star Wars Star Destroyer isn't to scale with the rest of the vehicles, because those things in universe would be a mile long. And even if you downscaled that to be consistent with the other toys, it would probably still be too big to fit in one room of your house. Best of Star Wars blogs. Someone here talks about, where did the name Palpatine come from? And if you read down here, they talk about, Palatine Hill in ancient Rome and how that's one of the places where that name came from. And actually, if you ever watched the 1976 film Taxi Driver, there's a politician in the name called Palatine, and his name comes from the same place. So if you ever wonder why those two names sound so similar, that's why. They basically got inspiration from the same places. And even if you watch the scene in Revenge of the Sith where Palpatine pulls out his lightsaber and kills all the Jedi Masters, he actually takes his lightsaber out from his sleeve. And that's similar to the way Travis Bickle draws his gun in Taxi Driver. Deliberate homage, because George Lucas was, friends with all those guys back in the day. And here they've got, some comedic comics that someone did. And here's some, concept art and things like that, and some, more comedic art. And if you look right there, they've even got a picture of the an early vision of the Death Star where the super laser's on the equatorial trench, which of course it is not in the final film, although it still appears there on the plans that R2-D2 delivers to the Rebel Alliance. So that's an interesting thought right there. Close-ups of some of those pieces of art. Make your own Vader mural. I guess if you had young kids, this might be kind of fun to do. And then there's a look over here at an ad for the Star Wars Fan Club. If I recall correctly, to get this magazine in the mail, you actually had to be a fan club member. You couldn't just get a subscription. My issues, again, came from Tower Records when I was working there, because at the end of the month, usually they'd throw out all the old magazines. Although I think I actually bought these on the newsstand when they first came out, because back then, this was before the era of social media just running rampant like it does today. So there weren't really a whole lot of sources for Star Wars news the way there are today. Yeah, Bantha tracks, by the fans, for the fans. Here's some pieces of just various fan art, and some of these people are pretty talented. I like how you got stuff that looks more like it could be from the 2D Clone Wars cartoon, but then you got some stuff that's a little more photorealistic. So there's some talented artists submitting pieces of fan art here, and I quite like some of the stuff I see. And then the fan art continues on this, and you actually have, some more cartoony stuff that little kids drew, but then you got, again, some more realistic stuff. So it's a nice array of, things people submitted, young and old alike. Again, I'm sorry if I'm coughing and clearing my throat quite a bit. Like I said, I am getting over a cold. And then they got an editorial section here. Just got like some... This is Mary Franklin, the editor of the Bantha Tracks column. Some random photos and stuff like that. There's an ad for a Sith Lord summer camp. And then a Star Wars shop here that I guess sells some random products. Here they've got a Shadow Stormtrooper. I'm guessing that was from the old expanded universe. I mean, in the newer canon Star Wars universe, they do have like some, dark-suited troopers that serve as guards to some of the more elite members of the Empire. And then they had like, cybernetic dark troopers that appeared in the Mandalorian series. Star Wars shop collector's picks. I mean, they got like some posters and t-shirts here, iPod covers, statues, and they even got a little Princess Leia costume if you have a small dog to put it on. I mean, they really do make Star Wars everything. Back in the day when the original movie came out, that's where George Lucas made a lot of his money, was merchandising. So when Mel Brooks came to George Lucas asking for permission to do a Star Wars parody that became Spaceballs, George Lucas, enthusiastically accepted on one condition: there could be no Spaceballs merchandise. So that's why there's the whole merchandising gag in the movie Spaceballs. Here we have, some more memorabilia and the like. I got some, busts, bobbleheads, clocks, reference books. And then you have the continuation here, more merch. And then you have this same ad you had in some of the previous issues where you can actually get Star Wars personal checks. I don't really use checks anymore, but honestly, if they still made these or some other company made them, I wouldn't mind having some of those because those actually are pretty cool. Nice close-up of some of the art there. You got the yellow M&M dressed like the like Darth Vader, complete with the red lightsaber. Interesting trivia. In the M&M's commercials, the yellow M&M is voiced by J.K. Simmons. J.K. Simmons is the actor who portrayed J. Jonah Jameson in the Spider-Man movies, and he's also the actor that appears in the Farmers Insurance commercials. And then on the back cover, again, we got that ad for that miniatures game. So that's the end of issue 88 of the Star Wars Insider. I've got like 2 more issues, so we got about 2 more weeks of content here we can go through. I'm looking forward to that. I do have a few music magazines as well. And I also, when I was at my parents' house, I found some of these old Game Informer magazines. We did Nintendo Powers a few weeks ago, so we can probably cover some of these in one of the future live streams as well. And then again, a few music magazines as well. So looks like I've got a few people still tuned in. Before I end the live stream, are there any parting shots, any additional comments anybody wants to make? Yeah, also, like I mentioned in my last episode, I am getting 4K releases of the Star Wars films, and I'm reviewing those on this channel as well. I actually just recorded a review for A New Hope in 4K, which will probably go up sometime in the next few days. And then I got the other 2 from the Classic Trilogy. If there's any good sales, I'll try to get the rest of those as well. Again, Skeleton Crew was mentioned earlier, so I definitely want to watch that when I get some time. I mean, I did renew my Disney Plus because they had the Black Friday sale. I also renewed my Paramount Plus because there's a new Sonic the Hedgehog movie coming out, and they've got that Knuckles series on there, so I need to watch that as well. I'll probably watch that before I do Skeleton Crew. But yeah, again, I want to thank everyone who's tuned in here. If there's any last-minute comments at all before I end the live stream, feel free to chime in. Don't be shy. Just keep it appropriate. That's all I ask. And again, not seeing a whole lot of interaction there, and that's perfectly fine. Big thank you again to everyone who did tune in. Again, this has been Taylor Carlson. Thank you for putting up with me and my sore throat and endless throat clearing and sniffling. Hopefully, I'll be feeling a little better for next week's live stream. I will see you then. Thanks again.